Well, hello there. Welcome once more to Kwankyewaa's kitchen. And if this is your first time stopping by, I would like to say a very warm Akatoa to you. Today I'm going down memory lane with this holiday special egusi stew and yam. This is so good and I really hope you are able to try this. Come along with me and see how I did this. Here are the ingredients you are going to need, and as always everything will be listed for you in the description box in their right quantities. So to start, I'm going to soak my egusi, or agushi as we call it. Typically, back in those days, we used to actually grind this in the Akatoa or earthenware pot. So in that case, you needed to soak it, and normally it will have some undesirable parts of the agusi like this. So I have just soaked it. They floated to the surface and I am just skimming them off, and then you set this aside. That way it soaks up some water, and so it becomes softer and easier for you to grind. I'm just doing this, of course, just because of memory's sake, but using a blender you don't necessarily need to soak it anyway. Here are my tomatoes and other ingredients all washed up, and I'm going to start by slicing my garlic. If my memory serves me right, garlic wasn't part of this recipe initially. Maybe as I grew up and we got to know the benefits of garlic, my mom started incorporating garlic in this. So if you don't like it, you really don't need to add this in here, and it's just going to be just as delicious. But garlic is good for you. So this has been minced beautifully, and now I'm going to set that aside and then cut up my onion. So this white onion I'm going to cut up into two. And then I'm going to chop half of that, and that is what is going to go in the oil to fry. Yes, if you've watched me long enough, you know that my mom insists that there is a way to cut up onions to make it into stew. Like for Ampesi, it has to be diced. I don't know who wrote that rule, but hey, I am not trying to do anything different. So yes, that is almost diced or cubed. And so it goes in a bowl. I'll set that aside and cut up the other half, which is going to be blended with the peppers to go in the stew as well.
Can you smell the aroma? Yeah. From Kwankyewaa's kitchen. Yeah.
So that goes into my blender. I'm going to add just one pepper. This is just one Scotch bonnet. And the other peppers will go in later for us, the adults, but I want my kids to be able to eat this. So this red onion, I'm going to also chop up into cubes, and that, or dice it, I should say, and that is also going to go in the stew, but it's going to go in towards the end, and this is just going to bring texture and color. You want this to look festive, so red onions, definitely, if you can have it, because of the color. You can use white onions anyway, but red will stand out more. Always we eat first with our eyes, so if it can pop, all the better. That is set aside. I have my tomatoes here, and instead of blending it, I'm going to chop it. So I'm cutting them into halves, then I'll deseed them and then chop it. So I have a bowl here. I'm just scooping the seeds in here, and then I will be able to chop up my tomatoes. Feel free to blend it. Use a food processor preferably to make it a little bit chunky if that is how you like it. I like my stews to be, have more texture in it, and that is the reason I'm doing this. I don't know why, but for some reason the memory of this stew always brings such great joy. Like, it just brings a good feeling. I don't even know why. Maybe because of how simple it is, the simplicity of life, and especially the concept of love behind it. Because normally when my mom actually made this was sent out, like I said, to friends and family members who wouldn't eat fufu, because on New Year's Day, because that is when we actually celebrated the holiday, Mama would ever so lovingly prepare this dish, so we would go and give it to the chifufu. Chifufu is just the term we would use for people who don't eat fufu. So our family and friends who would not want to have anything to do with fufu, she would make this, go the extra mile, even though she had prepared fufu and some chicken soup or goat's light soup or whatever, granite soup, and we would go and deliver this to such people. And yes, of course, typical Ashantis that we are, of course, we always brought in the new year with some hearty bowl of fufu and soup. So anyway, comment below if you have any memories like that, and let us just travel down memory lane together. After all, it's the holidays, and 'tis the season to be jolly. Fa la 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 la. Okay, let's go on. So I have my pepper in here, and if you thought I was just going to throw away my seeds and the juices from the tomatoes, well, you were mistaken. So here it goes. I've poured it onto my onion and pepper, and I'm going to use that as the liquid to blend this. So yes, all my nutrients still intact, okay? So these are my only blendables, and that gets blended. And then now that everything else is prepped, we can start making our stew. So I have my pot here. I have heated it up a little bit, and I'm just going to put in about a 1/3 cup of coconut oil. This is cold pressed extra virgin coconut oil in here, and that is going to melt. And now that it's melted, I've added my garlic, onion, and I'm just going to cook this until it's almost caramelized, and then I'll add the rest of my ingredients as and when it's time to add them in here. Of course, in Kwankyewaa, back in the day, fritol and all those new ones were not so easy to get. So something like this, coming from a home of cooks, you know, my mom, my grandma, and everybody, almost all her sisters, even my uncle has sold food sometime in his life before. So yeah, that is where all this comes from. So I have my blended onion, pepper, and tomato seeds in here now. And I'll give this about 5 minutes to cook down before I add my tomato paste and tomatoes. And so whilst I wait, I'm just going to go ahead and open my canned ingredients. So I don't have salsa tomato paste. I should have bought that because I could have found that in the African market, just because, you know, respect the process, penny so the penny. Well, but I got geisha mackerel, and I also have my Exeter corned beef, original corned beef from Argentina, you know. And yes, I am not going to mess it up. I opened it. Perfect.
Yay.
Comment below if you always do the happy dance when you are able to open your Exeter corned beef perfectly. So anyway, that is set aside. As you can see, this has simmered down beautifully. It has reduced considerably, and now I'm going to add my tomato paste. This is about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and I'll let this just mix up, and then I'll add my tomatoes so they all cook up together. Our diced tomatoes coming now. Stir it up, and I'm just going to let this cook all the way down.
Delicious, yeah, delicious, delicious, delicious,
I'll just cover this to cook through. That way the tomatoes just get to really simmer down. It will burst open, the skin will peel off, and it will end up being like I actually pulsed it through my food processor or blended it. Maybe not too smooth, but it's just going to be perfect. So yes, this is how it is looking now. Almost how I want it, and it's going to cook down some more anyway. At this point, I'm going to add some shrimp powder to it. This is like very coarsely ground shrimp. I'm using this to replace my Maggi cube, or Maggi shrimp tablet. That is what we would originally use, but we all know like too much of it, or let's just say it's not that good for you. So I have that. I also added some all-purpose seasoning, and I'm going to let this cook down a little bit, and then I'll add my agushi to it. I always blend my salt with my agushi. Back in the day, we would grind it and actually add the salt as well. This helps your agushi. Like, this is definitely for sure. This is like evidence-based, if I can say that. It really helps your agushi to clam up if you add your salt to it. And that is what Mama taught me, and that is what I always do. So our agushi is beautifully blended. I added just a little bit of water, so it's super thick. And now, as you can see, our tomato stew has cooked down some more, even more, and almost all the tomatoes are just disintegrated at this point. You don't really see any big chunk of tomato in here, and I'm going to add my agushi at this point. Extremely thick, so I've just ended up using a spoon to just get it out of the blender, because I don't want it to be very light anyway. So I'm just strategically going to place them, and that is how I always like to cook my agushi. I know the Nigerians would specifically just cook it on the side, almost like fry it, so they have the big clumps, and then they'll add it to whatever they're making. But this way is how I learned to do it, and it always works. So I'm just going to plant it in the stew just cover it up and then let it cook, and that way the clumps will form. So yes, as you can also see, I didn't add any salt at this point to my tomato based stew. I just added some salt to the agushi, and later on when I taste it and it's not enough salt, I can definitely add some more salt at that point.
Tasty. Delicious.
So dearest association, this is where we stop doing our thing. Everything from this point is going to be very gentle because we don't want to break our clumps of agusi. You know, Akatoa for, you know, if you were going to be graded, you will be graded by the clumps of the agusi you make into it. You know, back in those days, they didn't take anything for jokes, so everything had to be on point. And yes, I wouldn't make you. So anyway, I covered this for about 5 minutes. On the very lowest setting, this is a cast enamel pot, so you know it retains a lot of heat. So 5 minutes was more than enough. At this point, as you can see, it has clamped up, but I still have more of my raw egusi, so I'm just nudging on the corners so I can get the raw ones to go on the bottom and get cooked as well. So I'll cover this and let this cook for another about 5 minutes, lowest setting, and whilst that is cooking, let's get our yam ready to go on the stove top as well. So I'm just going to cut about half of my yam. Of course, back in those days, especially around this time of the year, it would be pona. That is what you would want to cook, especially taking it to friends and family. So I think this actually is pona. I don't know exactly, but looking at the skinny tail of it and everything, this yam was definitely very good. And if you live in my area here in the Phoenix Metro, I always get my food from A&A Hot Deals African Market. You know, that is Margaret and her husband. They'll take very good care of you. So it's all peeled. I'm just going to slice it, make it good. Okay, so, and there we go. And of course, this is a cook with me, so we show you everything. Part of it had these little specks in it, and of course you want to remove it possibly before you boil it. So that's what I'm trying to do, but be careful, don't cut yourself doing that.
Delicious. Delicious. Delicious.
So our yams are washed and I'm just putting them here in my pot to boil. I have washed my eggs. These are 3 eggs. Yeah, I have a family of 4. Don't ask me why I'm cooking only 3. That is all I have anyway. But representation, you know, we're doing it just like it has to be done. So somebody's not going to eat an egg, but it's all good. And I've added some salt and water. I'm going to cover this and bring it to a boil.
Delicious.
So this will cook, and at this point I'll just check on my stew again. It is doing amazing. All the clumps that I need to form has formed at this point. Do you see that? If I was getting graded, I think I would get a good grade. Tell me how you would grade the clumping of this agushi. Be generous, people. Be generous. Be kind. Okay, be kind. So I have here my mackerel now, and with all the sauce on it, yes. The mackerel no, and mackerel no. That tomato sauce on the mackerel, for me, it's everything. This has some bones in here, so I'm just trying to pick off some of the bones, and I typically just break them into half, so I have like 6 pieces. I have 3 in here. You know, you don't want them that as big. And my corned beef comes in now. I am just trying to make huge chunks of it as I bring it out of the can. I don't want it to be all the way disintegrated. And now I am going to mix that in. And like I said, this is the point where you want to be gentle with everything.
Delicious. Yeah. Delicious. Da, da, da. Delicious. Delicious. Da, da. Delicious.
So here's how I break my mackerel. I'm just trying to split it up. And now I'm going to add my diced red onions. This is just to bring more texture and a beautiful pop of color. My papushito comes in as well because I need a little bit of heat. It was just 1 pepper because of the kids, and of course it's also going to be colorful, and that is the color of the season. A little pop of red and green here and there. Yes, so this is done, and it's looking and tasting so good. It smells amazing. One thing I didn't stress on enough is the agushi. You want that to cook and cook very well. If it's not well cooked, it is going to smell funny and it is going to taste funny as well. So please. Anyway, it needed a little bit more salt, so I've added just a little bit more, and I'm going to mix this up, and I'll cover this so the heat that will be trapped in here will just cook the onions through just a little bit more, and our stew will be done. Very, very simple, but so huge on taste and aroma and flavor. You will just be amazed. If you've never had this before, I really hope you are able to try this. Just look at that. Perfect. Everything is cooked the way it should. The pepper is soft enough that we can squish it in now. The onions slightly soft but still maintaining its color, and that is how you want it to be. And like perfect timing, our Ampesi is done as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and strain it, and we are just about to sit and enjoy this. My childhood holiday memory, very, very well relived. Thank you so much for doing this with me, and I really hope you are able to try this. I am very thankful for your love and support all year long, and I can never thank you enough. Please like and share this video, and until I come your way next time with something delicious, be loving, be kind, be happy.